3 startup teams are ready to go, and our expert jury is eager to listen to their presentations. Just a reminder to our presenters, make sure you're close to your microphone because it would be a shame if we can't properly hear you. First up is Sentinel Biosensor. The team develops wearable, continuous vital signs monitors that have a medical grade accuracy and consumer levels of usability. Those are used in hospitals and in patient homes. Please welcome Dave Huranger from the Netherlands. Good luck.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dave Huranger, and I am the CEO and CTO of Sentinel Biosensor. You also notice in this presentation today that we are rebranding to Wear Health. The problem we are addressing is the increasing cost of elderly care due to an aging population who are living longer with more chronic conditions than ever before. As you can see, the effects and costs are truly staggering. Now, the problem is also global and it's growing. To put it simply, it's just unsustainable, socially, financially, and logistically. So the EU recognise this urgent need and they appoint 5 academic university hospitals to address the issue. And pretty quickly, the hospitals come back with an answer, and it's that we don't spot deterioration at an early enough stage. In fact, we hardly even look for it. On average, across the EU, you'll be monitored only once every 8 hours on a general ward and considerably less when discharged home. Monitoring vital signs, no matter what the condition is, saves lives. And the hospitals know this because either they have to pay for the patient readmission or the insurer will pay for it. So a new sensor is needed that works not only in hospitals, but can also be used by patients in their homes. And this sensor just doesn't exist. So the EU issue a tender to the healthcare industry to design and develop the next generation of vital signs monitors. And we, together with 198 other companies with unlimited funding and resources and decades of experience, apply. Oh, I've lost my, there we go. No. And the reason I'm here today is because Sentinel won. It did exactly what startups are meant to do. We challenged tradition and we innovated to deliver a medical grade monitor with consumer levels of usability. Sentinel has successfully undertaken 2 clinical trials in hospitals and in patients' homes. So as an example of innovation, Sentinel has an 8-day battery life. And the reason that's important is because the average length of stay in hospital is 6.3 days. Nobody has to change the battery till the patient is going home. And for a busy nurse, that's a real advantage. We have a waterproof microphone for cough detection, 3-axis position to prevent pressure ulcers, fall detection that also records the G-force of the fall, and much more. So funding was actually a small part of the prize. The real prize was working with 5 hospitals for 2 years, solving their issues, medical, nursing, procurement, in order to deliver this state-of-the-art monitor. That was the real prize. Now, some say this is a crowded market, and in some respects, that's true. It's a crowded market for devices that are not end-to-end solutions. Many monitoring companies felt that monetizing data was a good idea, but they forgot that when the network failed, their devices failed with it. Clinicians now know this, and Sentinel works off-grid. It will always work wherever the patient is. A solution is one that works for all the stakeholders, and that includes building managers, IT, procurers, and the patients, both in hospitals and in their homes. So what does innovation solve? How does innovation solve these problems? Blood pressure without an inflatable cuff means monitoring is no longer dependent on staffing levels. Patients can sleep undisturbed through the night. We can calculate a continuous news score and detect deterioration at the earliest possible time. And off-grid means that you can move patients anywhere in a hospital, not just the rooms with routers and hubs. It means you can send an 80-year-old who has no digital skills home, knowing that they will still be monitored. And this is the team that makes Sentinel possible. All experts with decades of experience. I built my first medical wearable for use by sailors on nuclear submarines in 1985. And this team have already proven their capability and deliverables. We assume a SOM of 0.5% of our 7.6 billion euro SAM. Our sensors are on a subscription model of 15 euros per day for 18 days use. That's 6 days in hospital, as that's the average length of stay, and 12 days post-discharge, as that's when 60% of readmissions occur. The 5 Nightingale hospitals themselves calculated a 16.2 million euro saving for every 30,000 discharges, and we project annual sales of 29 million by our current year end. We should be generating revenue in about 3 weeks' time, and Sentinel is scheduled for release to market by April 2021. We need funding for working capital, volume purchasing, and filing our patents, and we're raising 1.5 million euros. If this is a project you think you can bring value to, we would love to talk to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Well done, Dave Harangi. Let's go over to the jury and see who has questions.
Hi, Dave. This is Florian with EIT Capital. Nice presentation. I'm curious about the cuffless blood pressure measurement, how that is done and what your validation looks like, because I think there's any number of technologies, but only one FDA approved for now.
There is, and part of that last slide was raising money for the patents. We had to get this through 5 university hospitals, and then because it was an EU project, it was externally validated by Oxford University. So the technology is good to do what we say it can do. But yeah, the cuffless blood pressure is a huge advance.
And can you say what it is based on, the technology?
I would rather not at this point in time, if that's all right.
Fair enough.
We'll have a conversation offline about it.
There might be too much information. Is there anyone else on the jury who has questions for Dave?
Yeah. So, what kind of vital signs are we measuring? I mean, typically that should be more than just 1 or 2, right? So, what are you measuring?
Core body temperature, respiration rate, heart rate. Obviously, there's an ECG in there with arrhythmia detection. Blood pressure, galvanic skin response, 3-axis position, indoor GPS, and probably a couple of others I've forgotten about for the moment. But pretty much everything you need to calculate a news score plus a bit more.
And which ones of those have been clinically validated?
All of them. We went through 2 sets of clinical trials in UMC Utrecht and also in UCLH in London.
Now moving to Fabrice, who also have a question.
Yep. And the forecast revenue that you were mentioning, so is it based on an industrialized product, or are you still on prototype? Or
we develop our own and manufacture our own product. It's our hardware, and we build it. Obviously, there are some standard industry components in there, PPGs in there. We don't make our own PPG units.
So where do you manufacture?
Scotland.
Really? Okay. Thank you.
Can you tell us something about the off-grid system? How does the blockchain aspect of this work?
We use a relational model, and it is an off-grid blockchain transaction. So when a doctor treats you in the basement, that transaction is recorded on his device if you have no connectivity, and he can also tap that mobile device to an NFC bracelet, and the last 10 transactions go onto that bracelet. So if the next doctor comes in who doesn't know this and it's not on the system, he just taps his device to the NFC bracelet, it picks up the transactions, and we don't duplicate the treatment.
Okay, so, but it isn't such that it's live all the time. It does switch off when there's no connectivity to somebody else's smartphone, for instance.
No, it doesn't switch off. When there's no connectivity, it's still recording, still doing what it needs to do. The alerting can be local, so that news score will change on the device. The alerting has to be local, so it's programmed with personal baseline alerts for each individual patient.
Okay.
Marianne also has a question. Go ahead.
So who are your customers today? Is it the hospitals or is it B2C?
It's a good question. We're going currently for the low-hanging fruit, and that is patients aged over 65 with 1 or more chronic condition that are discharged. They are the largest source of readmissions, and usually when it's in a much worse condition. So they're the easy, and we know where to find them. You head for the areas. We're basically looking for Florida all over the world. Where we find Florida, we know that's where we've got a higher demographic of the hospital gets a better return on investment.
Okay, because when they have all these measurements, who will actually tell the patient that they have to come in or that something is wrong with them?
You can have a control room in a hospital, or the insurer can set it up. We're currently working with Cambridge NHS Trust, who are looking about setting up a sort of alerting control room. We can predict pretty much who's going to come back in with a reasonable level of certainty, but the AI we use is actually on how long they will stay. So you might be actually relatively low risk of coming back in, but if you do come in, you're going to mess up our bed allocation and elective surgery for a long time. So I'd rather have you monitored so that you don't come back in, and I can treat you before you become an emergency. So yeah, sorry.
How do you set the alert level? How do you distinguish between something that's just?
I would love you to ask a question, Florian, but we are at the end of the 5 minutes. We'll have to save that for a next conversation. Thank you so much, Dave, and also our jury. That was Sentinel Biosensor. And they're saying we need to look closer at patients on wards, for instance, or patients with chronic illnesses, not just every few hours or maybe even every few days. Their new sensor makes it possible to do that continuously, even from home. We're moving on to our next pitch of the day. A tremor, as we all know, is an involuntary shake, mostly seen in the hands of people with, for instance, Parkinson's disease, and essential tremor. STIL is developing a brace that stabilizes that tremor with the concept of noise cancelling by applying an anti-vibration to the wrist, and they can reduce the tremor up to 90%. Please welcome to your screen, IJsbrand de Lange. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Well, my name is IJsbrand de Lange. I'm the founder of STIL. And I sometimes have shaky hands when I'm a bit nervous or when I'm hungry. However, this is nothing compared to what patients with Parkinson's disease have to endure. And I'm talking about their tremor, an involuntary shake in their hands. Here you see Tom. He has quite a severe tremor that causes him to have the most difficulties with daily tasks, eating, drinking, writing. A tremor does not kill you, or won't let you live either. There are 22 million people worldwide who have a severe hand tremor. Most of you will probably know it from Parkinson's disease, but actually the biggest group has essential tremor. So we've spoken to patients and doctors, and they all say the same thing. Current treatments are inefficient, and there's a need for something new. So we at STIL are developing an anti-tremor brace. Together with people like Tom, we spent over 2 years developing this brace. It will give them the comfort they need in their home to execute eating tasks and drinking tasks, or just to have a simple cook. So the brace makes use of the concept of noise cancelling to suppress their tremors. So a tremor is basically a vibration, right? So what we do is we apply a vibration in the opposite way and thereby counteract the tremor with our brace. In this way, we suppress the tremors. Here you see Tom again, wearing our brace. And when the light is turned on, this brace will actively suppressing his tremors. In this specific example, we reached over 60% suppression, which is already better than what medication does. So there are several competitors out there, but none of them are in the European market yet. How we distinguish ourselves from our competitors is that we will never ever restrict voluntary motion, and due to our trade secret algorithm, we will instantly suppress their tremors. So our current team consists of 9 members, of which 5 are in the core team. We have a proven track record in industrial design, clinical research, and business development. Among them, one of the advisors is Rick Helmich. He's the key opinion leader of the Netherlands. So let's be realistic. We will never be able to target the entire world. So what we will do is we focus on target countries, which is Western Europe and the US. Research has shown that 75% of all those patients want a new treatment. And we assume that initially 60% of them are early adopters and want it. Of course, when time progresses, this will increase. We've done several market studies, and the first one shown that approximately 2/3 of patients actually want to wear our device. And even better, 40% of those patients want to pay €1,000 out of pocket for our device. This results in a total market of 250,000 people really wanting to buy this brace. And if you take into account the customer lifetime value, this gives you a market value of 600 million. So that's why we based our business strategy in 2 phases. Initially, we will sell directly B2C in the Netherlands, Germany, and the UK. Lead generation will follow to occupational therapists and also patient ambassadors, with the goal of, in this phase, get a lot of market traction and gather real-world evidence, which we will need for the next phase. In the next phase, we will sell through distributors, and we will expand to the US and Western Europe. Lead generation will again go to patient ambassadors, but also physicians. And the goal is to get over 10 million of revenue by 2025. So we spent the last 3 years on doing market validation and business development. And we raised over 750K of public funding. We recently launched an R&D project together with Fraunhofer of 1.5 million that covers all our R&D costs, and we sold our first commercial pilot. So right now we're looking for a seed investment of 750K that allows us to execute our clinical study, which is already approved and funded for, get a CE mark, and start and accelerate the sales in the Netherlands, Germany, and the UK. So just we can reach 1 million of revenue by 2023. Afterwards, we will raise a Series A investment, which will lead us to go to the expansion to US and the Western of Europe, with the goal of making an exit by 2025. In a little over 2 years, we got to this point. We built a strong team. We have a very solid foundation with the market and a big customer base. We're now looking for an investor that can join our cause and help us give people like Tom a stable future. Thank you.
Well done, IJsbrand. Over to our jury, who has questions.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, since you start in a B2C model, so what's the price for patients initially?
The price for patients is 1,000 euros.
Okay.
Does
Anyone
the
else?
brace irritate the arm of the wearer?
So can you please repeat your
Does
question?
it irritate the skin on the arm of the patient because it's vibrating?
So we took very special care into finding the acceptance of our product. So during our market studies, we also validated, like, when do you actually use this device? How long will you use the device? So we actually let patients write a logbook. We had 20 patients write a log for 2 weeks, when they have tremors, when they have the most tremors, and when they would wear the device. And based on that, we found specific use case for our device, which is approximately 1 hour in segments of the day, being the morning, the afternoon, and the evening. For this case, we built the product specifically for that. And we use biocompatible materials in our brace that is really comfortable, but it will not be worn the entire day. It will only be segments of the day. And that way we can guarantee that it will be comfortable and functional to use.
Let's move to Todd then.
Yeah, you showed a market opportunity of 600 million, and
correct.
you show in 2025 10 million, and so that's if I calculate correctly 1.6% of the market. So what's the impediment to growing more rapidly, do you think?
So the market value is also based on us only targeting early adopters. So we expect in the initial 2 to 3 years, we only can target those people, but this will exponentially grow once we are more acquainted and build our brand. And getting to those patients, getting faster to those patients, I think will only require more capital. But we should not rush into this, because what is very imperative here is the fact that we need to get a real world evidence. We need to sell first, get a real world evidence that actually people are paying for it. This will incentivize all the distributors worldwide. They see, okay, there's actually a big market for this. There's a lot of people, a huge unmet need. We can make a profit out of this. This will incentivize the distributors. And then only then, I would say, is it a wise call to go to the US and to really use distributors to sell across Europe.
Okay. Yeah, just one quick question. So just for my understanding, this works like the noise canceling headphones, right? So
Yeah.
With the forces just in a position. Okay, and second, I mean, you've used this with patients. What would be the key feature if you do a second generation? What you're still working on?
So the current model you see right now, it's still too big. But we're working on a very much smaller model. So in the first iteration, it will be slightly smaller than this, and this will be used for the launch in the B2C market in UK, Netherlands, and Germany. Afterwards, we will include a more elaborate technology, which unfortunately I cannot talk about in public right now, which will be meant for the entire world. So we will definitely keep on developing and making the product more accessible and more functional whilst keeping it very small.
More questions from the jury for STIL.
Where do you place your product in relation to deep brain stimulation?
So deep brain stimulation is a very nice solution, but it's really placed at the end of the treatment spectrum for tremor patients. So once initially the patient has a small tremor, then it starts getting bigger. This is where we take the big chunk. And when it's really severe in the very end, then only you get eligible for deep brain stimulation. And just give you some numbers, only 2% of patients who have a severe tremor are eligible for this treatment because it's very costly, it's super invasive, and it's very costly. And also you have to be preferably younger than 70 years old.
I still have about 1 minute on my clock. Who wants to make use of that?
Yeah, to provide the energy, I guess you need a battery. So how long does the battery last? Does it heat?
12 hours.
Okay.
12 hours.
Okay.
And just to apologize to you, panel, I have no idea what would happen to my presentation. I was also a bit shocked. Normally the fonts would be very nice, but something seemed to have gone wrong with the fonts or something. I don't know, but apologies for that.
I think the jury is fine with that. Your story was clear. Are there any more questions? Because we still have a few seconds. Very brief one. No, then we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, IJsbrand and the STIL team for your pitch. Yes, STIL told us that there's about 22 million people in the world who are suffering from some kind of tremor, whether it's from Parkinson's disease or another disease that they are suffering from. And they're asking for help because there's not many options that they can do apart from some medication. And their brace based on noise cancellation will help them in the future. We've already arrived at our last pitch of the day, and I have to say we've seen some amazing stories here, and I think you all enjoyed it just as much as I did. Our last team presenting is Zoan BioMed, and Zoan BioMed design and develop orthopedic devices using marine coral, delivering disease-free, natural, and effective bone graft solutions for surgeons. And that is important because we all have an aging population. Declan Clark is joining us from Ireland. Go ahead.
Good afternoon and hello. My name is Declan Clark, and I'm founder and CEO of Zoan BioMed. Orthopedic surgeons perform over 2.5 million bone grafts every year, and they're faced with real challenges in the materials that they select for grafting. The autograft is the gold standard, but it requires a painful second operation to harvest that patient's own tissue. The allograft is from deceased persons, and so it faces ethical issues around this particular source. And also, in common with the bovine xenografts, it requires a blend of toxic chemicals to really make sure that there's no risk of transfer of disease to the patient. Synthetics are man-made or machined, and they're limited in their bioactivity. And combined, this creates a real need for innovation within orthopedics. At Zoan BioMed, we're harnessing the natural assembly process of coral to create the next generation of biomaterials. In Galway, we sustainably farm tropical marine coral. We harvest our scaffolds and we refine into granules. And the granules on their own or in more complex formulations like bone putties can be then implanted directly into the trauma site by the surgeon. And this platform has given rise to a really exciting innovation of a portfolio. We're launching with a bioactive granule for trauma applications, and then we're working towards true pain relief and disruption in spinal care. In terms of impact, we believe that we're entering a new era in orthopedics by accelerating the rate of healing for patients and for surgeons delivering highly effective and safe devices, which also reduce their operating time. And we're doing all of this with environmentally sustainable and highly cost-effective solutions. The global market for bone grafts alone is $3.2 billion, and in our initial target market of North America is $1.2 billion. And we're initially focusing on those segment of surgeons who are using VITOS, which is a market-leading synthetic by Stryker, and against which we very favorably compare in our preclinical trials. We're also focusing on those surgeons who are using Proostean, the wild coral-derived range by Zimmer Biomet, and this is coming towards the end of its product life cycle. This is coming towards the end of its product life cycle because it's no longer sustainable to harvest coral from the endangered reefs. The market is growing at 5% in the sector generally every year, and we're expecting that to happen for over the next 10 years. And this is informed by strong external drivers, such as the fact that the population is aging. There's a concurrent rise in diseases such as osteoporosis and osteoarthritis, and sports and trauma injuries are also on the rise. And again, combined, this creates a real need for innovation within the sector. Our management team is a true convergence of experience and expertise from the marine, from the medical device, from the financial, commercial, and scientific sectors. And this is underpinned by our ability to develop and implement our IP strategy. We're forecasting our first sales in 2021 and for the business to be profitable by 2023. And we're operating against a high gross margin. And we're conservatively forecasting a 3% market share in the US by 2025. And we believe that with the right strategic alignment, this number could be significantly higher. We're launching in the US next year, and we're currently preparing and finalizing our 510(k) submission. We're anticipating FDA clearance in Q2 of 2021. In terms of partnerships, we're exploring two routes at the moment. One, a straight distributor play, for example, with a metal implants company who specialize in the extremities and looking to expand their portfolio into biologics. And the second, a potentially more strategic alignment with opportunity for advancing our portfolio. In all of these discussions, our current ability on site to scalably and sustainably manufacture is a real bonus. We believe Zoan to be an excellent investment opportunity. We've achieved significant milestones since our first investment in 2018. And we're now looking for a further €3 million to launch in the US next year, further validate and advance our portfolio, close out the second tranche of our manufacturing capabilities, and really advance the business. So we greatly look forward to working with you as we seek to revolutionize orthopedics with nature as our guide. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Declan. Let's go over to our jury. Let's see who has the first question for you, Declan.
Florian, hey.
Hi, Declan. Thanks for the nice presentation. So I like the inspiration by nature, but what I was missing a little bit in your presentation is a clinical strategy. So it's one thing to get to regulatory clearance, but how you want to actually convince physicians that to use your product instead of other products. What is a clinical program behind your company to drive market adoption?
Sure. So we're recruiting surgeons with our first cadaver trial in the US next month. So once we're clear, our intention is to get the first in man in the second quarter of 2021. So we're not forecasting sales really until the end of quarter four of 2021. So our plan there is to advance the preclinical trials that we're now completing, and also that the cadaver trial will help us to recruit those initial surgeons to get it into the US.
So what constitutes success in these studies? What will actually pull surgeons who have been using these other products for years over to using your product?
I think there's a number of things. I think the biocompatibility is critically important because that will result in earlier mobility and faster integration of the device. So the device is osteostimulative. So it means that's allowing stem cells to really interact with the device at an early stage, to really form colonies and to embed it into and accept it into the body. So that means that the patient is more mobile. So it means that you're reducing the number of days out of work. So that's the real measure that we'll be looking for initially.
Is the jury looking for some more answers or maybe some more detail?
Declan, hi, it's Aidan here. Very interesting. You mentioned Zimmer had a similar product using coral, but they can't use it anymore because of environmental concerns. But you're sourcing yours from the ocean as well?
No, we're farming it, Aidan, in Galway, in Recess, just in Connemara. So we took a first CITES licensed of grandfather coral essentially into our facility in Connemara almost 10 years ago. So we haven't gone back to the ocean since. So we've developed methodologies that allow us to continually grow and essentially manufacture from that base.
Okay, great, thank you.
Other questions, Todd?
So you said you're preparing your 510K right now, and given what you said about your clinical program, to Florian's question, so you're submitting your 510K with no clinical data, it'll just be animal data?
It'll just be for animal data, yes, yeah. 3-month animal data and 6-month animal data to follow in the spring.
More questions? Oh, go ahead.
Your license to farm the coral, is that something unique to you, or are there many companies with similar licenses?
I think the barrier to entry is not so much the licensing to farm, it's the ability to select the species which have the properties of bone grafts, and also the ability, and we believe that we're the first company in the world to grow a xenograft under 13485 for medical devices. So they're closer to the barriers rather than the licensing.
Okay, thank you.
And how do you protect that? Is that trade secrets, or is that somehow IP protected?
Yes, we launched our first patent, Sasha, in June of this year, and that's around one of the core pieces of the technology. Other parts of the technology we protect under a trade secret, and we have our second and third patents in preparation at the moment.
Any additional questions? Go ahead.
It's a live product. So how do you ensure that the quality of the coral is the same, or the quality that you need?
So this is part of the R&D trials that we did, and that we identified a particular species that lent itself to this type of cultivation. And then we worked with a number of academic institutions to benchmark the quality of coral that we were growing. So once we had refined that over a period of time, we then translated it into a quality management system. So we now grow the coral under a full quality management system, which is now through its first phase audit. And that helps us to ensure that there's no variation in the coral. So we also have certain dimensions, like we only grow obviously a single species. We grow them at a particular stage in their life cycle. We have complete control over all of the environmental and inputs into their quality of life. Yeah.
One final very quick question. Otherwise, we'll conclude the 5 minutes. I think that is it. Thank you so much, Declan, for your pitch, Zoan BioMed, and of course the jury as well for asking the questions. Yes, and we heard from Zoan BioMed how important it is to have a way to produce bone grafts, because you can use donors or substitutes, but that has its limitations. So they have come up with a way to use marine coral to have a solution to this issue. That also was the last pitch of the day. So thank you all for the amazing pitches that we've heard throughout the day, and thank you, jury, for being so involved.